Let's call in our big gun, Epictetus, for a moment. He said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that's the problem, isn't it? You think you already know what love is. You think you know how to make them miss you. You think that by waiting, by proving your loyalty, by making yourself available, they'll wake up and realize your worth. But let me ask you something. Where has that gotten you? Look at yourself. Look at what you've become. Sitting by your phone, checking their last scene, analyzing their posts, hoping, praying for a sign that they still care. You call this love. This is self-betrayal. You call this making them miss you. This is giving them power they never earned. They don't miss you. They're not even thinking about you, because they know you're still there. They know that no matter how much space they take, no matter how long they disappear, no matter how little they give, you will always be waiting, always hoping, always too afraid to move on. But let me tell you something. The second you realize that waiting is not love, hoping is not strength, and loyalty to someone who does not value you is not a virtue, that's the second everything changes. One day, something shifts. Not in them, in you. The version of you that tolerated this, that accepted breadcrumbs, that clung to the past, dies. And now, they're the ones searching for something they once had control over, something they thought would never leave. They never thought you'd move on. They never thought you'd stop caring. They never thought they'd have to live in a world where your presence was no longer guaranteed. And when they finally realize, it's too late. Because now, you've become the ghost they never thought would disappear. Before we dive in, like this video so this message reaches the people who need to hear it. Subscribe and tap the bell icon, because today we're not just talking about moving on, we're talking about transformation. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever been discarded, underestimated, or taken for granted, this message is for you. Today, we're unraveling the one thing people never expect. What happens when you stop waiting, stop hoping, and finally take back your power? Because here's the truth. People don't fear losing you while they believe you're still there. They don't feel the weight of their choices while you're still orbiting their world. But the moment you detach, the moment you become untouchable, that's when the real chase begins. Write this in the comments. I am no longer waiting. I have moved forward. Say it, own it, because the second you believe it, the world will reflect it. And here's the kicker. When you truly move on, they don't just regret losing you. They become desperate to have you back. Stay tight, because next, we're diving into why the human mind is wired for regret, and how you become the one they never stop thinking about. Number 1. The human mind is wired for regret. Here's how you become the one that got away. When people remember you, they usually forget to think about the pain they caused you. That's a hard truth most people don't face until it's too late. Most people don't fear losing you. What really scares them is losing the version of you that needed them, wanted them, and put them first. Imagine being a main character in someone's story, and one day you decide to walk out of the plot. What you leave behind isn't just an empty space. It's a story without an ending, a joke missing its punchline. Think about a movie that stops right before the final scene, or a book with its last page torn out. That's how they feel when you move on. You were a chapter in their life they never bothered to read carefully, assuming you'd always be there, waiting in the background, ready whenever they looked back. But here's where you flip the script. You close the book, turn off the movie, and start a new story. one where you're the lead, not just a supporting character in their drama. The shock of you moving on is the twist they never saw coming. It's like waking up from a dream and trying to fall back asleep to find out how it ends, only to find that the dream is gone, slipped into the ether, unreachable and unresolved. Their mind races over every moment, every conversation, wondering what they missed, what signs they overlooked. You become a puzzle they can't solve, a song stuck in their head with no name to Google, no app to find it. It's maddening, it's haunting, and suddenly you're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. This isn't just about making them miss you. This is about taking back your life, your story. For so long, you've put them at the center of your universe. But what about you? What about your dreams, your happiness, your peace? Why should your worth be tied to someone who only sees you when you're gone? Let's be clear, moving on isn't about getting even. It's about getting your life back. It's about waking up and realizing that the sun doesn't rise and set on their approval. You've given them the pen to write your story for too long. It's time you took it back and started a new chapter, one where you're not just a footnote in someone else's life. It's tough, though. Detaching yourself from someone, especially when your heart still beats a bit faster at the mention of their name, feels like pulling your own heart out. But remember this, your heart is yours to give, and it's not meant to be left in the hands of someone who doesn't know its value. You might think, what if I'm making a mistake? What if they change? What if they come back? These questions are the chains that keep you locked in a doubt and fear. But what if you fly? What if moving on opens up a world so big, so bright, that what you had before looks like a candle next to the sun? What if you find someone who loves you, not because you're there, but because they see you, truly see you, and love all the pieces you thought were unlovable? Yes, they will start to miss you when you move on. Yes, they will feel the gap where you once stood. But this isn't about them anymore. It's about you. It's about you realizing that you are enough, that you deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to see your worth. So make that decision today. Decide that you are the hero of your story, not just a character in theirs. Write down, shout out, or whisper to yourself, I am the author of my story. I write my ending. Believe it. Live it. Because once you do, the world doesn't just reflect it, it reverberates it. And remember, as you step forward into this new chapter, their regret isn't your concern. Your path isn't paved with their apologies or their realization of what they've lost. It's built on your strength, your courage, and your ability to say, I deserve better. As we continue this journey, remember that moving on isn't just about putting physical distance between you and them. It's about emotional freedom, about untangling your worth from their words and finding that, in the silence of their absence, you've found your strongest voice. Stay tuned. In our next discussion, we'll dive deeper into why your indifference is their wake-up call and how your newfound freedom becomes a mirror that forces them to confront themselves. Number 2. Nothing haunts the ego like a person who no longer cares. When they started pulling away, they probably expected you to react. They might have thought you'd send messages, ask what was wrong, or maybe even plead for them to stay. But what if, instead of all that, you chose silence? That choice can be incredibly powerful. Your silence can speak louder than any words you might have said. It's natural, though, to have moments of weakness. Maybe there was a time when you did reach out, when you did ask them to reconsider their distancing. Perhaps you even begged, driven by the fear of losing something familiar, something comfortable. But it's important to realize that everyone can slip up. Everyone can have moments of vulnerability. What matters more is what you do next. If you took a step back after that, regained your composure and embraced silence, this would only have deepened the impact of your quiet stance. This pause in the usual noise of trying to maintain connection shifts the dynamic. It forces them to confront the possibility that you are moving on, that you are not just waiting around for them to decide your value. Imagine a scenario where someone keeps hearing their name, but suddenly, one day, it stops. At first, they may not notice, but as time goes on, the silence becomes undeniable. They begin to miss the sound, to wonder why it stopped. Was it something they did? Could they have responded differently? This silence, your silence, plants seeds of doubt and reflection in their mind. It's powerful because it shifts the focus from what you're losing to what they are missing out on. They start to realize that your presence, your attention, and your care, once so freely given, are not guaranteed. Your silence tells them that you value yourself enough to no longer chase after those who do not see your worth. This is not just about making them feel your absence. It's about you recognizing and embracing your own self-worth. And yes, silence is challenging. It requires strength to not fill the space with pleas or attempts at conversation. It's a form of self-discipline to not try to fix things immediately, to allow the space to speak for itself. But this silence is not empty. It's full of respect for yourself and for the natural course of relationships. It respects the fact that if someone truly values you, they will notice your absence and care enough to address it. So, if you've found yourself in silence after they've pulled away, remember that this quiet is not a sign of defeat. It's a statement. It's an act of self-care and strength. It's you, choosing not to settle for less than you deserve. It tells the world, and them, that you are not someone who waits in the shadows, but someone who walks forward into the light of their own worth. If you ever feel like breaking this silence, remind yourself, I am enough. I deserve someone who sees my value without needing to be reminded of it through my absence. And if this resonates with you, if you've found strength in silence, share your story. Let others know that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Number 3. Your absence is a mirror. Now they have to face themselves. When you were always there, always reaching out, they never had to stop and think about their own value. Your constant attention was like a mirror, reflecting back at them everything they wanted to see about themselves. They felt wanted, important, and special because you were always there to confirm it. But what happens when the mirror suddenly goes dark? When you stop chasing, when you step back, and they no longer see themselves reflected in your efforts? That's when they have to face themselves. Imagine this. A person stands in front of a mirror every day, and every day they see themselves dressed in grandeur, adorned in praise and affection. This mirror tells them they're wonderful, crucial, irreplaceable. Now, imagine one day the mirror is gone. There's just a blank wall. They stand there, and there's nothing to reflect their grand image back at them. What's left? Just themselves, without embellishments, without the constant validation. And they are forced to ask, am I really all those things I thought I was? This is what happens when your presence becomes absence. You've been like a mirror, and your absence forces them to look elsewhere for reflection, inside themselves. And this can be a harsh reality to face. Without your attention to reaffirm their worth, they begin to doubt how special they are. They start to see parts of themselves that aren't so perfect, aspects that aren't validated by someone else's admiration. They have to sit with their own thoughts, their own self, without the distraction of your adoration. The mind, when left alone with itself, can be incredibly harsh. Without others to distract us, our thoughts turn inward, and often they turn critical. They start noticing the silence where once there was praise, the emptiness where once there was companionship, the void where once there was love. This solitude forces them to confront their own insecurities, their shortcomings, the parts of themselves they've ignored. And often the conclusion they reach is, maybe I wasn't as special as I thought without someone there to tell me I was. This moment of self-reflection can be pivotal. It's when the real growth happens, both for you and for them. For you, stepping back is a move towards self-respect. You're choosing not to spend your energy on someone who needs constant chasing. You're deciding that your worth isn't dependent on someone else's acceptance and that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. You start living for yourself, finding joy in your own company, and embracing the peace that comes with not chasing validation. For them, it's a wake-up call. They are faced with the possibility that maybe they've been relying too much on external validation, too dependent on others to feel good about themselves. They might start to understand the importance of self-love, of knowing their own worth independently of others. They may realize that they've been taking your presence for granted, mistaking your generosity for obligation, your love for necessity. And here's where the transformation happens. As they sit alone with themselves, they start to understand the value of what they've lost. They realize that your love was a gift, not a given, that your presence was a choice, not a chore, and that by taking it for granted, they pushed away something precious. So, if you've found yourself stepping back, embracing absence as a form of presence, know that this space you're creating is not just for you to heal and grow. It's also a space for them to confront and reflect. It's a tough journey, but it's a necessary one. And sometimes it takes losing something to truly appreciate its worth. Remember, your absence isn't about making them suffer, it's about letting them grow. And as they face themselves in the mirror of their solitude, they begin to learn the hardest lesson of all, that true worth comes not from the admiration of others, but from the strength found within. So, if you're moving on, if you're stepping back, hold your head high. You are not just walking away, you are moving forward. And in doing so, you are setting free not just yourself, but them as well, to find a reflection that is truer, deeper, and more enduring than any mirror can offer. Number 4. You're not winning. If you're waiting, here's what actually breaks them. You're not really moving on if you're just sitting around, hoping they'll come back to you. This is something that many people don't realize when they say they've moved on from someone. They might stop calling or messaging, but inside, they're still waiting, still hoping, still living in a world defined by someone else's presence. They keep checking their former partner's social media, their heart skips a beat when their phone buzzes, and they're still secretly wishing for a message that says, "I miss you." This isn't moving on, this is waiting in disguise. But what does it truly mean to move on? Real victory, real moving on, happens when they cross your mind, and it doesn't disturb your peace anymore, when you can think of them and feel nothing, no anger, no pain, no longing. That's when you've truly moved on. This is the moment when you are genuinely free, not just pretending to be. And ironically, this is often the moment when they start to notice your absence more acutely. Why? Because there's a real change in your energy. You are no longer sending out signals into the universe that you're waiting for them, no longer holding a space for them in your life. You've truly let go. Imagine a tethered balloon. As long as it's tied down, it's not going anywhere. It might float and bob around, but it's still anchored. Many people think they've let go of the balloon because they're not holding the string in their hands. But the truth is, the balloon is still tied to their wrist. It's only when you cut the string completely that the balloon drifts away, free to go wherever the wind takes it. That's what real moving on looks like. Cutting the string, not just releasing it from your grasp. The power of truly moving on is immense. It shifts the dynamic completely. When you stop waiting and start living, when you fill your life with new memories, new joys, and new people, your whole aura changes. You radiate happiness and confidence, and strangely enough, this is what often makes your ex-partner sit up and take notice. They begin to see what they lost. They see someone who is happy without them, someone who doesn't need them to feel complete. This is often what breaks them, what makes them realize the value of what they had. Because when you were waiting, you were still theirs in a way. They still had a hold on you. They could still believe that maybe, just maybe, they could come back if things didn't work out elsewhere. But seeing you truly move on, seeing you thrive without them, forces them to confront the finality of their decision. It shows them that the chapter is truly closed, that you are no longer an option, no longer a backup plan. Moving on like this isn't easy. It requires real introspection and a commitment to your own well-being. It means surrounding yourself with friends who uplift you, diving into hobbies that captivate you, and sometimes seeking the help of a therapist to untangle your feelings. It means learning to love your own company, finding peace in solitude, and building a life that makes you excited to wake up every morning. This journey of true detachment is liberating. It teaches you a lot about yourself, about your strengths, your capacity for forgiveness, and your ability to rebuild and renew. It's a profound personal growth that no one can take away from you. And remember, this isn't about making them regret their decision or wanting them to see what they've lost, although that might happen. It's about you. It's about creating a life that you love, with or without them. It's about finding a state of happiness and fulfillment that is completely self-generated. So, if you find yourself thinking of them and not feeling shaken, congratulate yourself. You've reached a milestone. You've truly moved on. And if you ever feel the tug of the old strings, remind yourself of this. I am not winning if I'm waiting. I win when their absence no longer feels like a loss. Write it down, say it out, live it. Because once you do, you'll realize that the greatest victory is not in having them come back to you, but in becoming so whole on your own that their return or absence no longer changes the weather in your world. Number 5. What they feel now. It's not love. It's the terror of being replaced. When you walked away, what they felt wasn't love. It wasn't the deep, aching loss of your laughter or the absence of your kindness that unsettled them. No, what really shook them was something far more centered around themselves. The fear of being replaced, the terror that someone else might come along and fill the spaces they took for granted. The stark realization that someone else might get to hear your jokes, engage in your conversations, and see the world through your unique lens. That's what truly stung them. And if you think you weren't that funny, that special, let me tell you a fact, folks. Every person brings a unique light into the world, a light that no one else can replicate. It's not just about making someone laugh or having deep conversations. It's about the connection that blossoms from these interactions, the memories created, and the feelings stirred. You being you with all your quirks and all your charms, that's what made you irreplaceable. But here's what often happens. When you're always there, always available, people might start to overlook what makes you special. They might start to see your presence as a given, your efforts as expected. It's not until you're gone, not until those jokes are shared with someone else, those insights exchanged with another, that the full value of what they had in you begins to dawn on them. The thought of you laughing with someone else, building new connections, it does more than just make them miss you. It forces them to confront a very uncomfortable truth, that they are no longer the source of your happiness, and perhaps they were never solely responsible for your sparkle in the first place. This realization isn't about your absence making their heart grow fonder. It's about your absence highlighting a void they didn't know existed until you chose to fill it elsewhere. This isn't about them loving you because you're unforgettable. It's about them fearing that they have become forgettable to you, that someone else is now appreciating the conversations they never fully valued, the jokes they didn't laugh at quite enough, the perspectives they took for granted. It's about them lying awake at night, wondering if the new person in your life is laughing at your quips, thrilled by your thoughts, comforted by your presence. So, if you ever feel like you're not that funny, not that special, remember this: what makes you special isn't how much you can make someone else smile. What makes you special is how true you are to yourself, how freely you express your thoughts and emotions, and how bravely you share your view of the world. Your uniqueness isn't validated by their longing or their loss. It's illuminated by your ability to move forward and shine elsewhere. And for anyone out there who's moved on, who's found themselves on the other side of needing to be needed, know that your worth isn't measured by the emptiness you leave behind, but by the new joy you build in your own life and the new connections that flourish around your true self. Let them deal with the terror of being replaced. Your journey isn't about staying irreplaceable to someone who underestimated you. It's about being unforgettable to yourself, constantly rediscovering your joy, and never doubting that you are, indeed, more than enough. Your light doesn't dim because someone failed to shield it from the wind. It shines brighter in new spaces, ready to illuminate paths that welcome your every step. And if you resonate with this, remember and affirm to yourself, I am not just a fleeting presence in someone's life. I am the architect of my own happiness. I move forward, not because I am unloved, but because I am unstoppable. Number 6. Indifference is the death of hope, and that's what they fear most. When someone leaves you, they might expect a lot of things from you: tears, anger, maybe even pleas for them to come back. These reactions, as painful as they are, all signal one thing: you still care. Whether it's through your sadness, your anger, or your desperation, your emotions show that they still hold a place in your life, a space in your heart. But what if you show none of these? What if, instead of anger or tears, you respond with indifference? This is what truly shakes them to the core. Indifference. It's like a cold wind that sweeps through the halls of their expectations without a whisper. It's not loud or violent, it's silent and still, and it chills far deeper than the fiercest anger or the most visible sadness. When you stop reacting, stop caring, stop placing them at the center of your emotional world, you send a powerful message. They are no longer your sun, and your world has stopped revolving around them. Think about a day when the sun doesn't rise. The world doesn't end, but it fundamentally changes. Everything that relied on the sun must adapt or fade away. This is how powerful your indifference is. It changes the ecosystem of their expectations. They wait for your emotional sunrise, and when it never comes, their world is left colder, darker, and unsure. Indifference is emotional death because it's the absolute absence of care. Hate, as fiery and destructive as it is, still means you're invested. Sadness, with its deep, aching blues, means you feel the loss. Anger, with its red-hot energy, shows you're still fighting for something. But indifference, it's grey. It's nothing. It doesn't push. It doesn't pull. It simply exists, and in its existence it denies them the one thing they expected to have, even in the worst of times: your attention. When they realize that your life keeps moving, that your days keep coming and going without a pause for them, that's when the scale of their irrelevance becomes apparent. They see you laughing, living, thriving, not just surviving without them. They see you filling your days with joys that have nothing to do with them, and each smile of yours that doesn't dim in their absence is a reminder of their diminished space in your life. This collapse of their importance is the hardest for them to accept. Everyone wants to feel like they matter, that their presence or absence changes things. But when faced with the reality that they are not as central as they thought, it strikes a blow to their ego. The ego thrives on being necessary, on being a key character in someone else's narrative. When you show them through your indifference that they are just a footnote, it rearranges their understanding of their own significance. And nothing is more humbling than the realization that the world doesn't stop for anyone. The sun rises and sets, the tides ebb and flow, and life goes on, with or without them. Your indifference shows them this universal truth in the most personal way possible. So if you find yourself moving on, embracing the quiet power of indifference, know that you are engaging in a profound act of self-respect. You are teaching them, and perhaps reminding yourself, that no one is the center of anyone else's universe. You are showing that you control your emotions, your reactions, and most importantly, who and what deserves your energy. And remember, the goal of indifference is not to punish them or to make them feel small. It's to free yourself from the emotional ties that bind you to places, people, and pasts that no longer serve you. It's to make room in your life for growth, for new experiences, and for peace that comes from knowing you are truly the master of your own feelings. If this resonates with you, if you felt the liberating chill of indifference, share your story. Let others know that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Let them see that sometimes the best way to elevate your life is to let go of the weight of others' expectations and find the balance in your own emotional independence. Number 7. When tables turned, their desperate clutch at shadows. When the tables turn, it's like watching someone try to grasp at shadows. They reach out, but there's nothing solid to hold on to. This is what happens when you move on, and they start to realize the full impact of your absence. It's a stark and often desperate realization that the person they took for granted, the one they assumed would always be there, is now beyond their reach. This reversal of roles can leave them scrambling, trying to reclaim a connection that has slipped through their fingers like shadows in the fading light. Imagine this. They were used to seeing you as a constant presence, a reliable figure who would always respond, always engage, and always be waiting just around the corner of their needs and wants. But as you start to live for yourself, prioritizing your happiness and putting your needs first, a panic sets in on their part. Suddenly, they are no longer the puppeteers. Instead, they find themselves on the other side, where control is just an illusion, and all that's left is the desperate hope that you might glance back. It's like someone walking through a familiar room in the dark, reaching for a light switch that has been moved. They fumble along the wall, confusion growing with every empty swipe through the air. Your moving on rearranges the furniture of their expectations, leaving them disoriented and unsure of their place in your world. At first, their attempts to reconnect might be subtle. A message here, a call there, perhaps an accidental encounter they swear was just chance. But as the reality of your indifference settles in, their tactics might shift to more overt gestures, driven by a growing sense of desperation. They might send flowers, write long messages recounting good memories, or suddenly show interest in your life and passions, things they barely noticed before. But what they're really doing is clutching at shadows, trying to recapture a warmth that has long since cooled. This desperation often stems from the shock of losing not just a partner, but a part of their identity. When you were in their life, they could define themselves through the relationship. Your affection and attention gave them a sense of worth and validation. Now, stripped of this, they face the daunting task of self-assessment. Who are they when they're not reflected in your eyes? This question can lead to a profound internal struggle as they grapple with feelings of worthlessness and irrelevance. Moreover, the effort to regain your attention is not just about missing you, it's about missing the version of themselves that you upheld. They miss being loved, needed, and important. Your moving on holds up a mirror showing them a version of themselves they might not be ready to confront, one that is less lovable, less needed, less central to someone else's world. The harder they try to pull you back, the more they reveal about their own fears and insecurities. Each desperate gesture highlights their own doubts about their value and worth. It's a painful realization that the love and respect they crave must come from within, not from external sources. In this scenario, your role is not to comfort them or reassure them of their worth. Your path is one of self-care and forward movement. Engaging with their desperation does not help them. It only hinders your progress. The kindest thing you can do for both parties is to continue your journey forward, maintaining your boundaries and protecting your newfound peace. Remember, their clutching at shadows is not your responsibility to resolve. Their path to self-discovery, though painful, is necessary for their growth. Just as you have learned to find your happiness independently, so must they learn that their worth is not contingent on someone else's presence. As you continue on your path, embrace the light of your own growth and let go of the shadows of the past. The process of moving on is not just about leaving a person, it's about leaving behind old patterns and expectations that no longer serve you. It's about stepping into a life where you are the author of your own story, no longer a character in someone else's narrative. So as you move forward, let the tables turn. Let their desperate clutch at shadows be a reminder of your strength, your worth, and your capacity to thrive on your own terms. This is not just a journey away from someone who undervalued you. It's a journey towards a self that deserves and demands respect, both from others and, most importantly, from yourself. Number 8. When finally their loss hits home. As the saying goes, when you realize the value of all life, you dwell less on what is past and concentrate more on the preservation of the future. So folks, when they finally understand what they've lost, it hits them like a ton of bricks. It's not just about missing someone, it's about realizing what they took for granted and seeing the depth of what they've lost. This isn't a simple case of feeling lonely. It's a deep, painful understanding that something important is missing, and it might be too late to get it back. Imagine them sitting alone, the busyness of life suddenly quiet. The distractions that used to keep thoughts of you at bay aren't working anymore. In these quiet moments, the truth becomes too loud to ignore. They start to think about all the times you were there for them, the support you gave without thinking, and the love you shared so freely. Now, when they reach out into the silence, hoping to hear your voice or expecting a message, there's nothing there but the echo of their own regrets. They might replay old conversations, both those that happened and those that should have, but didn't. They think about the arguments where their pride was more important than making things right, or the times they didn't take your feelings seriously, not realizing that each of these moments was pushing you away. Each memory, which might have once seemed small or insignificant, now seems like a major loss. This dawning of realization, understanding the full weight of their actions and your absence, can be overwhelming. They see clearly how their actions, or lack thereof, contributed to the current emptiness. It's like waking up from a long sleep, only to find that what was once a dream is now a reality they have to live with. The loss of you, once abstract, becomes tangible. They can feel the void in everyday activities where you once laughed together, in the quiet evenings when your conversation filled the air, or in the moments of distress when it was your presence that brought them peace. Now, each of these moments serves as a reminder of what is no longer theirs. This isn't about nostalgia or a simple wish to turn back time. It's a profound realization of having taken something or someone for granted. And with this realization comes the hardest lesson. Not everything lost can be found again. Not every mistake can be fixed. And not every goodbye can be undone. In dealing with this loss, they face a choice: to continue dwelling in regret, or to learn from this experience and move forward, perhaps more thoughtfully than before. While they can't change the past, they can influence how they handle their relationships in the future, valuing them more, expressing gratitude, and never assuming that good things require no effort to maintain. This is their moment of growth, though it comes through pain. It's a necessary step towards becoming someone who understands the true value of people and relationships, ensuring that in the future they never let something precious slip away so easily again. Number 9. Your growth is the only closure you'll ever need. So, you want to teach them a lesson. You want to see their desperation. You want them to regret every moment they took you for granted. Then stop waiting for it. The best revenge isn't some dramatic confrontation. It isn't screaming, begging, or demanding an apology that may never come. The best revenge is proving to yourself that they were never necessary. It's thriving in silence, succeeding in peace, and building a life so strong and fulfilling that their absence becomes irrelevant. The greatest revenge is massive success. You want them to feel it? Then stop making your life about them. Stop checking their updates. Stop hoping for a message. Stop wondering if they'll wake up one day and realize their mistake. Because here's the brutal truth: they won't see your worth while you're still waiting for them to notice. What do people regret the most? Losing something they can never get back. And that's exactly what you become when you move on for real. Not just pretending, not just waiting in silence, but truly rebuilding yourself into someone they no longer have access to. Think of yourself as a rare painting in a museum. If it's always there, easy to access, people will walk by without a second glance. But the moment it's removed, the moment they can't have it anymore, suddenly they remember how valuable it was. Your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. They didn't see it before, but now they'll feel the loss like a missing puzzle piece in their life. Sometimes the best way to teach someone a lesson is to remove yourself from their syllabus. At first, they won't notice. They'll assume you're still there, still orbiting their world, still waiting in the background like you always have. But as time passes and your silence continues, the reality starts to sink in. You're gone. You're not there to boost their ego. You're not there to feed their need for attention. And without you, they're left with one thing they never wanted to face: themselves. People do not miss you when you're still in reach. They miss you when they realize your absence is permanent. That's when the desperation sets in. They start asking questions. Why aren't they chasing me anymore? Did they replace me? Were they always this strong? And by then, you won't even care. You see, the point isn't to make them regret losing you. The point is to grow so much, to build such an amazing life, that their regret doesn't matter to you anymore. While they are looking back, wondering what went wrong, you're already too far ahead to care. So write this in the comments: my success is my closure. My growth is my revenge. Own it, live it, and never look back. Write this in the comments: I am the one they will regret losing. Say it, own it, let it sink into your soul. You are not someone's backup plan, not a second choice, not an option waiting to be picked. You are the prize. If this message hit home, like this video so more people can break free from waiting on someone who never deserved them. Subscribe and tap the bell icon, because next we're diving into the ultimate psychological shift that makes you completely unforgettable. Leave them wondering forever, and by the time they realize, you won't even care.